Okay, good evening, everybody. It's 7 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Planning Board. It's Tuesday, February 15th, 2022. And the first thing on the agenda is to introduce the Planning Board members. So I'll start down at my left, Doug Breskin, who is an alternate. Next to Doug is Von Dugan, and then Mike Hodder, who is the vice chairman. John Thurston to my right, and Brad Harriman, who is representative from the Board of Selectmen, and also Julie Jacobs, who is also an alternate. We have two members missing tonight. So if the two alternates would be willing to sit in on yes. Various applications, and okay, thank you very much. Okay, there are no public hearings, but there is a discussion of the Pop Whalen Municipal Building. This is at 390 Pine Hill Road. It's tax map 144-Lot 6. So I guess I will turn this over to Randy. Okay.
Madam Chair, just want to announce I'm going to recuse myself from the discussion, anything to do with this project here.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Is this on? Yeah. Good evening. Randy Tatro, Norway Plains, and we're the surveyor and civil engineer for the site plan for this project. We did the initial work back 10, 11 years ago when the last improvements were made to that area. Not the ski lodge, but the improvements around the rink that were done, I want to say around 10, 11 years ago. I'm here tonight to answer any questions on that history as far as the location, as far as the survey development of it. We did go in this fall and do a complete as-built of what was there so that we had, new information in CAD that could be utilized by not only our engineers, but also any of the other professionals that are involved in the project. So Friends of Pop Whalen and Town of Wolfeboro obviously are the entities involved in this. And tonight is mostly an informational meeting with you guys so that you can see what we have so far. All the players are here to ask questions on the different elements. Myself or any of the historical survey parts to this. Paul Bois from Norway Plains that can speak to this, any civil, drainage, stormwater, whatever, with that. And I think you know that gentleman. And so they're probably going to just take over now and give you an overview of the project.
Okay.
And then however you want to handle it, Kathy, then you can decide where and when you want to ask additional questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, Jim Pinio, Town Manager. As you're aware, there's a warrant article for the Pop Whalen Ice Arena in front of us for a complete renovation. When we initiated this project earlier this spring, we had intentions of simply doing a renovation with a small expansion onto the facility. As we worked through the information associated with the structural components of the building, it was determined that we would not be able to expand the facility because of the snow load capacities which the building currently has. We looked at several different options, which one of them was to reinforce the existing structure so that we may be able to keep the building vibrant going forward. However, when we did that, we learned that it would just barely get to the point of meeting code, and we would therefore not be able to do any form of an expansion based on the snow loads. From that point, we looked at alternative options, with the preferred option at this point being a tear down. The tear down will involve the superstructure coming down, the refrigerated floor, and a lot of the elements of the arena will remain the same, and a new building with a modest expansion will be put on. We've been working with the architects, Banwell. We've been working with CCI, a construction manager, and all of the subs. We've been holding, at this point, bi-weekly meetings to get us to a point of hopefully signing the contract and being able to launch this project should it pass at town meeting. If this passes at town meeting, we are envisioning probably an April 4th to April 8th timeframe to initiate demolition of the existing structure. We are concerned about the lead time on the new building coming forward. It's our understanding that it could be upward of 26 weeks for the new building. We're also concerned about some of the elements such as a dehumidification unit. Could be a while before that arrives. I believe that's a 40-week lead time. The other thing that will happen there is the chiller. That'll be swapped out. The refrigerant will be swapped out with an environmentally friendly refrigerant, which will make obviously the arena much safer going forward. With that said, I believe Norway can speak more to some of the civil stuff relative to drainage, stormwater management during and after the construction. If there's any questions specific to the project, myself or Victor Druin or a gentleman from CCI may be able to help answer those questions.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paul Blanc from Norway Plains Associates. As you can see here, what we have is this site plan here. This expansion of the building is located right in this area here. Can I take this up so I can point? Work better like this.
Okay.
All right, good. All right, so this would be the expansion here. This parking lot, as you can see in that aerial that I sent you out there, was graded out because it was approved, I think, back in, Randy, 2010, thereabouts. So it's all to grade. It just hasn't been paved. The stormwater management for that has not been installed yet. What that is going to be is for a treatment swale, which will be here. Probably in another additional one here. Before everything was graded just to go on super elevated and come to this point. But now that we're going to crown it, we're going to actually have another swale right there. The runoff from the roof will be captured by a drip edge, which will infiltrate, and whatever doesn't infiltrate will come out through here. This is kind of phase 2. Is that correct? The parking area that will be paved, is that how the budgetary thing is going to work? So it'll become more of like a phase 2, but the grading is all there, ready to go. This area right here will be altered slightly for the entrance. And then there'll be just a path around here for construction that will be left after construction. Waste will be taking these tanks right here, mimicking them and putting them right here. They will be replaced, they won't be reused. And then pumped right back up in here. This line will be tied off, and then the force main will be attached right here, up to those leach fields. Pretty straightforward in terms of erosion control measures. We'll be using earth berms and silt sock with coconut wrap. So that'll be environmentally safe. No little critters will be caught in there. And then they'll decompose. So there will be a construction area right here, entrance.
So there will be silt fence put up to protect the wetlands?
So the silt sock in the earth berm is preferred. We can certainly put silt fence up. and tow it in there, but going forward, you really want to use the silt sock. You don't want to
Okay.
have these woven, because the little critters can get caught in there. So we're trying to avoid that, and there's more disturbance. And we find that it's ungodly looking, actually, too. So the silt sock is definitely preferred.
So is the storm drainage part of your plan?
So, for the component coming off the roof, it is, because that's part of the drip edge. So that would come off here. So that'll be captured. This right here, we can put in when they pave that area and they bring that right up to final grade, which is, they'll just shim certain areas that have kind of settled and stuff.
So that'll be done at a later time?
In a later time, exactly.
Okay.
And so these will just meet the AOT standards. That's how they're designed. So they meet up to state standards.
Okay, but you do plan to do it?
Oh, yeah, yeah. We get the details all set, calcs all done. It's the same spirit that was done back in 2010. We just updated the calculations to confirm. So this swale became a little wider, just because the standards have changed.
Okay, are you done with your presentation? Okay, all right, questions, folks?
Yeah. Is there an expansion of the leach field, existing leach field? Is it on town sewer? What's the septic?
There's not going to be an expansion to the leach field, Vaughn, because it still meets the numbers. The numbers are going to be the same. The addition doesn't allow for any additional, the structural addition doesn't propose any additional loading as far as the original septic system goes. There was an amended part to it when you guys did the ski lodge and the maintenance building that ties into it as well. So we will probably have to do another amended septic, but just to show the relocation of the tanks. And we'll probably have to reiterate the loading, but we checked the loading and the amount of people that were proposed for it, and the same situation, it should be fine. There shouldn't be any need for an additional construction of the leach field.
How old is the leach field that's
I
there?
want to say it was 1996, 92. Yeah, there's two big leach fields, but Paul King did it from Conway. It was, I want to say, around 1990, in the 1990s. And I actually dug up the tanks years ago when they did the ADA entrance stuff, so they could see if the pitches worked and stuff. And unfortunately, the tanks are located right here, so they got to move out. And there's 4 big tanks. I want to say each one is like 2,000 gallons. So it was previously designed for a big amount of people. So in this particular case, that was one of the first things we looked at to make sure that there wasn't going to need to be any reconstruction. There's going to be new tanks and new pumps because it's a pump system, but no need to redo the leach fields that are currently existing.
Randy, can you point to the leach fields on that map there? I only see one. Oh, that's one up there? Okay. I didn't know that was it.
In years past, they were up by where the old little ski lodge was in the back. I think in years past, they did alternate, the flow to each one to try to give them a rest and stuff. But they're working and functioning properly, so unless we had an indication of failure, we wouldn't have to worry about, dealing with that part.
Go ahead, Mike.
Couple of questions regarding drainage. Can you describe how the water runoff from the roof is going to be captured on the north side of the building? Looking at the plan, I see a proposed gravel path. I don't see any, under the drip edge, any indication of plantings or anything under the ground indicating how you're going to capture and mitigate runoff from the roof on that side of the building?
Okay, so you're talking about this
Correct.
side of the building right here, which is
Yep.
the north side?
Yeah.
So if you look up here, this is a drip edge detail. Mm-hmm. So what it'll do is go into there, infiltrate, and what does not will go through that 6-inch pipe at heavier storms. So that wraps around through here.
Okay. Okay. I see that, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
As far as the parking lot is concerned, in the narrative, is mentioned that their paving is not currently on the budget, but the drainage calcs have been made as if based upon the parking lot being paved?
That's correct. So it does, because you use that curve number. Whether you use gravel or pavement, in today's calculations, they make you, you don't get any credit for gravel. You have to calculate it as pavement.
You have to calculate as pavement?
Yeah, you
so
have to
that's
now.
okay.
There's no, yeah, they haven't played, that game's done.
Okay. Also, with the parking lot is, I see on the plan, on the, I guess it would be the west side of the parking lot, proposed 4-inch loam and seed is indicated on the plan. Is there any chance of putting in some kind of natural vegetation there as opposed to loam and seed?
So using actually, when stormwater goes through a 4-inch high grass, it actually goes through, takes up nitrogen and phosphorus, and that's kind of, it's what's called a vegetative buffer. You can use also forested buffers or woodland buffers, which is actually a great way to do it before it goes in there. It's like God's little treatment before it goes in there. So after construction, it'll go through here, the grass, and then if you want to put plantings and stuff, make that suggestions. I'm sure that's not a bad idea. But the grass works great as long as it's kept at about 4 inches.
Okay, so the grass is effective. I was just thinking in terms of natural location, something that's other than grass down there might blend in better, might fit better with the area.
Absolutely, it's a great idea.
And the last question, is the Conservation Commission going to have a chance to say something about this? I understand they don't have it statutorily the right to do, but it might be nice to have their input if it were a possibility. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay,
You can stay right there.
go ahead, John.
So on your detail, it calls for the 4-inch grass to be mowed at a height acceptable to accept the growth and not to be cut too short. How will we advance that to the appropriate people who will be mowing that? That will be part of the program moving forward?
And that's a great question to ask, because maintenance is the most important thing. And so there's a maintenance manual that will be put together, very easy document, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
So with that detail, it also called for minimal fertilization. I was wondering, could we add minimal organic fertilization to that?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's great.
good idea.
Low
So-
phosphorus.
Yeah, so back to the drip edge detail, the straight down off this side here. I see the pipe is right at the bottom of the pan and doesn't allow for much infiltration into the ground because the pipe isn't above the ground surface. Is there any way we could make that more of a trench system there and get that pipe up in the air so a lot of that goes down into the ground? Or
We can keep the pipe at that same elevation and increase the amount of stone in there. Let's throw 18 inches in there. And then what we'll do is maybe we'll put the perforations upward. So we'll introduce more infiltration. Yeah, it's a great way to do it.
That's a good idea.
I see it's relatively shallow you got the pipe at the 12 inch. So in the back side of that building is usually pretty shaded, and that would probably freeze up most of the time during the springtime. How are we gonna, I mean, I do drainage. I usually stick a heat wire down my drainage pipe, and so that in the springtime it stays flowing. Have you put any thought to maintaining the integrity of that when it's frozen up back there?
No.
No? Okay, that's one of my questions there.
So we could increase the depth up to 4 feet, but no, we'll keep it at 3.
You know what I'm
Wanna
saying?
keep it at, yeah, I know what you're saying. We do a lot of these, and they seem to be okay. But yeah, we could think about that.
All right.
It's not a bad.
All right. The picture about the existing building, is the existing building going to come down and leave the concrete pad? Oh, maybe not your question. You're going to leave the
That is correct. So the concrete pad is remaining, refrigerated floor. That's part of the struggle with the demolition because they essentially have to take the building apart piece by piece to preserve that refrigerated floor. But for all intents and purposes, that is not being touched.
So as our master plan facilities chapter, I know that we did a serious look at the Zamboni floor, and it was all broken up, and when the Zamboni comes off, it leaves residual, and then they go out the door, and it's all frozen. I know when we talked to Kathy Rankin, it was really a serious concern for her, and are we going to address that issue?
So I have had some conversations regarding Zamboni operations lately. One of the items that I've learned about the Zamboni is they should actually be raising that up before they come off the ice to prevent that freeze up that you're speaking of. So that's an operational issue that we've got to work on going forward, and then shovel the remnants of that pickup before the next shift of people come on the ice. Operationally, we have to deal with that. Relative to the Zamboni floor, I mean, I'm not sure if that's part of the project or not, Victor, but that's something that we will take into consideration, and maybe Jeff can speak to that.
Hi, Jeff Downing, CCI Construction Manager. That's Zamboni floor, I think, is scheduled to be redone anyhow as part of the project. The rink slab, the cold slab stays, but that Zamboni floor gets pulled out, and I think there's an ice pit that has to go in with that.
Are you gonna, is there any chance you'll be heating that floor by any, will you be heating that floor?
The ice pit is usually heated with waste heat from the process, or it runs radiant heat.
Okay.
Typically, that's detail is still being worked out with the architect.
Oh, that may be the black mark next to Zamboni's garage then. There's going to be more square off the building there? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
So so this is to Jim. So the next area that was of concern was the pump and maintenance room, and I know that there were timetables on some replacements of those pumps and some upgrading maintenance that was to be scheduled right off. I know Kathy said that some of them were nearing the end of their useful life cycle. I don't know how we're going to address that.
Are you talking the pumps relative to
The area next to
refrigerator?
the Zamboni room, just off to the side there.
Refrigerant.
So the chiller?
Yeah.
So it's our understanding through Preferred Mechanical that those items are approximately halfway through their useful life at this time. So there is no intention at this point to replace those. What the plan is tentatively going forward is the cooling tower will be replaced. The cooling tower will be placed on a standalone structure. Rationale for that is we want it off the building, and it's going to be away from the building so that snow coming off does not impact it. The goal going forward at some point would be to convert over to what's called a cube system for the chilling. That cube system is about $750,000 in today's dollars. We felt that the fact that the chiller is about halfway through its useful life, it's good to keep that chiller as is. Now, in the future, if we do go forward with the cube system, the building is configured to be able to accept solar, and those cube systems, the way they operate, they're variable speed as opposed to an instant on type of thing, so they'd be able to handle the load of the cube system on the solar. So that's our intent going forward at some point, is to replace the chiller when it gets closer to the end of its useful life and incorporate that with a solar project on the building.
Okay, so my next area, since you're on the roof, I'll stay there. That snow or slide's going to come off the back of that north side, and then it's going to land on that flat roof there. Are we confident that we're not going to have any leaks on the edge of that backside of that flat roof when the snow comes to build up? And is it going to slide all the way off, or is it going to rest on there?
I believe that's a good question for Jeff, but it's my understanding that there's a separation between the two roofs that was going to help to prevent that buildup of ice and try to keep
Okay,
it moving
Jim?
off the building.
Jim?
It's actually a metal roof, so they looked at putting a membrane EDPM roof there, but you're right, it would pick up a lot of that snow load. So the idea is to have it pitched and have the snow come down, hit the roof, and keep going with metal. So that's the way it's designed right now.
So when it comes off and lands, is the metal panel wall from the ground up, will that be able to take the abuse of snow piling up against the building?
No, it won't, so that's why it's masonry. Changed it to masonry.
All right, so I'll ask Jim the next question about the one of the other issues that was brought up at the facilities day. We had a large discussion about the ventilation and how it was going to be ventilated, because a lot of the rooms aren't ventilated and it would smell sourish in there. And I know when we were there, they had just had somebody subcontract to put a vent in one of the rooms, and it was really inefficient, and the town got taken on that job. So I didn't see any ventilation on any of these plans with all these locker rooms. Do we have a
So it's my
plan?
understanding that the final design is taking place relative to that now. They are working, there will be ventilation in the building. So that particular side of the building, it's my understanding that there'll be a roof-mounted unit to handle the complete HVAC system. That side of the building also does have radiant heat in the floor, but the architects have recommended that we back that out and not use that. So we are going with just the roof-mounted units to handle the ventilation on the entire side of that building, and it's my understanding to include the locker rooms.
Okay. So my last and final one is the combination snack room / grinding room. And I don't know if that had ventilation and how safe it was to be grinding skates in the same room while you were selling your snacks.
So I'm not sure which version you have, but that has been modified, and I believe that was corrected in that updated rendition, correct, Victor? Yes. So that has been separated, and I believe ventilation is accounted for in that skate sharpening. So good catch, thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, you said you're going to move the chiller off the roof, but where are you going to put it? I didn't see anywhere on the map where it's going to go.
So not the chiller, but the cooling tower, and it's my understanding it'll be basically right in the same place, just on the ground on a standalone structure, steel structure.
The cooling tower is actually on an independent stand, sits on a structure, and it's raised up above the roof level, so the snow slides underneath it. So that is the cooling tower. There's some, the compressors are inside the building.
Julie, anything else?
Are there any other uses anticipated? I see there's a mountain bike room. What about concerts or art? I think it's supposed to be an art center.
So excellent question, and the hopes going forward are absolutely, we want to be able to use this as a multi-year facility. Right now, the plans are to expand the usage of ice in the shoulder seasons. So to try and hopefully open it up a couple weeks early and extend it a couple weeks later. We have a difficult time doing that now because the building's not insulated and we're subject to Mother Nature. That extra shoulder season will give us the opportunity to hold more tournaments at the facility during those shoulder seasons, which will obviously attract people into town. As far as alternative things taking place in the summer, yeah, we anticipate that. We haven't got it pinned down yet, but really what we're restricted by is the floor. So, for example, it's not really recommended to bring vehicles in on the refrigerated floor because of the thickness of it. So there wouldn't be car shows that would take place in that location, for examples. However, the opportunity for indoor summer sports, absolutely. Flower shows, bridal shows, crafts fairs, different sporting events at that shoulder season. You know, if a baseball team can't get in onto the field, but we're able to get them into the arena to practice, we certainly are open to that. The options really are limited by creativity, I believe.
Doug, did you have any questions?
Not at the moment. I'm coming into this a little new, so
Okay.
trying to absorb it all. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
I do.
Are you going to install any lighting around there, new lighting?
So that's a good question that I'm really not sure of. I can tell you that we have to come in with new overhead power. We've got to, for all intents and purposes, the way that the mountain, the lodge, and the maintenance building and the arena are fed right now with electricity is a mess. So we'll be coming in with new overhead power that will terminate basically in between the lodge and the arena. There'll most likely be 2 poles set there. I would imagine along those poles that we would do additional lighting. I imagine we would do parking lot lighting, but we would absolutely do dark sky compliant.
You
lighting.
will do it?
We would do that, yes.
Yes, okay, all right, thank you. What about landscaping? Any thoughts been given to landscaping around the new structure?
I don't think there's a whole lot of landscaping that can really be done. That backside, I believe it would be toward the north. You know, that's being left as an access type of road for emergency purposes. Short of that, there really isn't a whole lot of landscaping that's going to be taking place on that location. There was a discussion about having a ramp or a set of stairs at the end of the arena going up to the mechanical or the maintenance shed. Here. But that conversation, we felt that we had ample ways for people to be able to egress the building and get away without having to put those stairs in and another thing to have to maintain.
Okay. Julie, go ahead.
Jim, where has the office been moved to? Is it going to be easily accessible now? So you can
Yeah,
just
it's gonna
drive
be-
in and go to the office?
No, you won't have to go through the arena to get to the main offices. So I'll point out the main entrance and the offices to you. So it's going to be much more user-friendly for people coming in to get their beach passes or to speak with Parks and Rec or whatnot.
So where will the new bleachers be? It says in your internal to the building part. You're
I
gonna-
believe that they're going to be in the same spot.
I thought they were in front of the window.
No, those are standing.
That's going to be standing room.
Oh. Yeah, same place.
Yeah. So so in the bleachers inside, is there any overhead heat projection that will be in there or anything?
Hockey.
I know, but sometimes you go to arenas and they have heat lamps that are above you. Yeah.
We weren't able to do the under either with the... Yeah, so at this point, they're not programmed in. We were originally talking about recovering some of the heat from the chiller and plumbing that underneath, but I think that got ruled out. You know, and I think, quite frankly, that's going to be a budgetary item to be able to, you know, if we have room in our contingency to be able to make happen.
Jim, it seems like this facility is going to be used more than it is now. Are you going to have enough parking?
I hope so. I think that they've done the calculations and they can speak better to that.
Yeah, there's 64 spots right now that we'd be adding.
You're going to be adding?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. And where?
So if you turn to that one page, you could see that there's some additional parking. There's 64 spots there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
There is parking there now. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, if we have a busy weekend where you have a hockey event taking place and some ski racing taking place, we're going to use up all those spaces. What we've done in the past is we've worked out an agreement with the NIC to be able to park there and bus people over. So we do have alternative plans for parking.
Okay.
But I think we've made it as efficient as we possibly can.
All right.
For the additional parking that you talk of with the 64 spaces, is that an expansion of the existing dirt lot that's there?
What was your question again?
So where you have the shaded area for the additional paved area, it's currently a gravel lot.
That is correct, as you can see in the area.
Is the size of the lot changing from what it is now, or you're just...
No, the footprint is the same, because that's how it was designed and so it's graded out, just hasn't been paved yet. So
Okay.
it'll be striped out, there'll be spots and stuff.
I just want to be clear, because you say 64 additional spots, but it's, I guess, the same amount of parking.
It's defined.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, anyone else have any?
Yes, you'd mentioned taking the existing building apart piece by piece, and I assume that means bringing in some heavy equipment. Is there any risk to the existing road with that heavy equipment coming in?
Jeff?
I guess there's always risk to a road during construction, but if it holds up to buses, it should be okay for construction equipment. If it isn't, I'm sure somebody will give us a bill.
Thanks, Jeff.
So to Kathy's point on the landscaping, is there any chance that you could dress up the front of the building or on the face?
I think the front of the building, you know, we are right to pavement, if I'm not mistaken, so there's really no room for any landscaping right up in front of the building.
It looks like you could add a few trees in the corner here on the way past the building as you're going toward Abenaki. There's a little bit of space we could maybe soften up.
Well, that is a concerning area because that's where the pipe for the sprinkler system and for the snowmaking runs. So, I mean, it would have to be low root type of vegetation with those pipes running through there. But I guess it's something that we could put into our notes.
I think it might just help if the weeds were kept back in the summer. It would look better that way in the maintenance program. Because when you go in the summer through the riprap and everything, it looks pretty ratty. If more people are going to see that, they're going to go, "Man, it's gross." But the rest of it, it's snowbanks. All winter long, it's snowbanks.
Right. Yeah, I would assume that when we complete this building, then it's handed back over to us. The maintenance schedule will be significantly more intense on the building and the surrounding properties than what it currently is.
It could be like, wilder plantings too, not just let go, but, things that would just kind of grow naturally over the whole summer, and then you cut them down once. That sort of thing looks nice and intentional. You still don't have to mess with it. Kathleen can just, just say, oh, it's growing fine.
So I think that's something that we as the group can work with going forward, about landscaping issues around both the parking lot and the structure when we get to finalizing those designs.
One last comment, Jim. We've heard the word maintenance here tonight a number of times, and clearly there's going to be, to keep this building up to snuff once it's done and handed back over to the town, there's going to be considerably more maintenance required on it than is being conducted now for obvious reasons. You'll have a new building. How is that? And I know this is not part of really this hearing, but has the town considered how this additional maintenance is going to be handled?
Mike, you always ask the good questions.
Well, it's something that, to refer back to John, in our community facilities chapter of the master plan, we recommended a maintenance person and a maintenance department for the town. We have a new town hall, we have a new town library, we'll have a new town Pop Whalen soon, we'll have a new, presumably, public safety building soon. I will not be here in 25 years' time, but were I would not want to have to be dealing with maintenance issues because we simply didn't do it the way we ought to.
Agreed. Maintenance of buildings, equipment, for me is an important thing. And that's something that, I took pride in my previous career. And that's something going forward that I absolutely agree we've got to do a better job of maintaining these buildings. At the arena, we currently have a maintenance staff that does a good job, and I think they will be up to the task of managing this building going forward. I think the other thing about this is when the new building's handed over, we're going to have a much better idea of how to operate the building than what we currently do today. The building that's there is difficult to manage because it's an uninsulated, not dehumidificated building, and it's not really a very pleasant place to be in the summertime. So I would sit here and say it would be my intention going forward to maintain the building with the money that's been invested into it so that it lasts for years to come. If I remember correctly as well, one of the things that was identified in the business plan, and obviously this won't happen until the funds come in to be able to justify it as an enterprise fund, but this is recommended to have 2 employees dedicated to operations of the building. Once this building gets to a point and we're able to create the revenue in that enterprise fund to justify those positions, that's a conversation that I will absolutely have with the Director of Parks and Rec and the Board of Selectmen and bring it to the voters.
Thank you,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other?
Is there a plan to take the demolition materials, especially the steel and the metals, and sell them?
So we actually asked for a price to be able to salvage those in case the town had a desire to utilize the steel, to repurpose it. And that was a $12,000 cost to be able to salvage those, but they'll be bundled up and we'd have to take them. At this point, no, it's my understanding that it's going to be bundled up and taken to salvage, and Jeff, you can speak to it beyond that point.
All that material basically gets salvaged and scrapped and reused. It's part of the bid process with the demo guys. They will take the material, get it off-site, salvage it, and it gets melted and reused, to my knowledge.
So that's part of their bid package?
That's part of their
Yeah.
bid package, and like Jim said, if we left the material on site, the mainframes for use for the town, they don't meet any sort of current code. It was It's going to be a $12,000 add to their number.
I wasn't thinking we would reuse it. I think somebody else might, or recycle it.
It will be recycled. They're demo guys are junkies. They save everything and reuse and salvage everything they can. So,
Okay, everyone all set? Okay, Tavis, so we'll have a list of the suggestions that have come up and send them to Jim or whoever.
I've tried to take good notes. Other than that, it'll be outlined in the minutes. I'll just try and make sure, and then once we have draft minutes, I can get that forwarded on.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Is that how we're going to handle it? Is there any kind of time constraint here? I mean, are we going to simply wait for a couple of weeks and then get something off to Jim? I would be happy to send a list of my comments to Tavis. Each board member had,
Okay, well, we can go over them right
and then
now if you want to do.
we could go over them right now. That's not a bad idea.
Oh, okay.
Just so we have something to give to you, get to keep the process going.
Okay, all right, so the septic system, we've dealt with that issue, and I think you've got that one under control. You will consider some landscaping if possible. Lighting will be dark sky.
Dark sky compliant, and landscaping, low bush blueberries or something similar on the northwest side of that parking area.
And there's a stormwater design that will be eventually added, not right away, but I think a year or so.
I can't
Yeah.
tell you that right now. I
Okay,
think-
but it will be added.
Yeah, I mean, I think
okay.
part of this as well is, we're trying to stay within that budget number. And if we have a very successful project and we have the ability to leverage some of the contingencies, then that's what we'll do.
Okay, all right.
What's the budget number, Jim, if I ask?
The budget number for what? The entire project? 6.9 million is the total budget and some change, and we have a contingency of 450,000.
Okay, and you will consider using some organic fertilizer?
I think we can put that into the operations of the property going forward, correct?
Okay, and you feel as if you have enough ample parking to cover most activities?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right. Other,
Conservation Commission get us a chance to chime in?
I'll actually reach out to the Conservation Commission tomorrow and schedule a visit with them.
okay, did I hit?
The drainage is going to increase the sub base with the 18 inches of coarse stone before the pipe. And he's going to put the holes in the pipe to the top side.
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
all right, anything else, folks?
Just
Okay.
had one more thought, Jim. Is Zamboni going to scrape and empty in the same place it always has? That's not changing, is it?
I can't answer that question. I don't know the operations.
I was just
well
thinking,
enough.
you go into the other board, and that's the question they're going to ask.
I will speak with the Zamboni operators and department heads tomorrow to get a handle on the operations, and if there's anything different we might be able to do going forward.
No, it's just they're going to ask.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, planning board members, for your comments also, but thanks a lot for coming.
Thank you much
Good
for your
luck.
time, and if you have any questions about the project, please reach out to myself or anybody on the team, and we'll be happy to answer them for you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Great. Okay, why don't we change the order of this agenda
Welcome back.
so that we could do Tailor Homes,
Good.
since you're here. Okay, Kurt, why don't you come on up and tell us what's going on here?
All right, good evening. My name is Kirk Beswick, representing Tailor Community tonight, and I believe you've got a packet in front of you that shows a slight change to the site plan for what we call the Tailor Community Amenities Building at Back Bay. The reason for the change was, as we've discussed at previous planning board meetings, that we had applied for an alteration of terrain permit for the larger project, which is a 60,000 square foot healthcare building. And because of that, that meant that we had to include the amenities building project into that AOT. So essentially what happened was we had to modify this small compact site to include drainage calculations. And there was no way to really include storage and treatment on that site without changing the parking plan. So what you have in front of you basically allows for a couple of things. We reduced the impervious asphalt paving by 107 square feet. We added one parking place. We got rid of all the retaining walls around the side of the property, which is a fairly large expense. And we added drainage and treatment on site so that the water coming off that parking lot is going into a holding cistern underground and will find its way to a catch basin on Bay Street, as shown in the plan. So that was all driven by the AOT application and the requirements of the state. So our team went back and basically made sure that we had the right amount of parking and that we could do everything we needed to do on the site to make that work. So all in all, it worked out okay. It just, we're still working on what that cost factor will do. And currently your plan doesn't show any landscaping on it, so we're still waiting for a revised landscape plan. Now that the site plan has changed, we have to go back and revisit that.
Okay. All right, questions, folks?
I do. You said that they had to take out all the retaining walls going towards the street?
The retaining walls, yes, but there is a perimeter rock wall around the property, which still shows on the site plan. But because of the elevation change, we had originally showed two 12-inch stacked stone walls. But by changing the shape of the parking lot and moving it back toward the building, we were able now to grade. It's all sloped, most likely to be lawn.
Lawn again?
That will be easily maintained, at least we hope so. So those walls went away.
Any other? Go ahead, John.
I'm sure they're valuable, and you could find somebody to repurpose them. It's about $900 a ton.
Yeah, we have a big pile of rock from our blasting sitting out there that now we'll probably have to haul away.
Okay, any other questions or concerns? I mean, this is a modification of what we had previously approved, so that's why it's back here.
But it's an improvement over what we had
Right.
previously approved. So I'm not sure we would need to bring this to the public.
No, I don't. Doesn't seem as if we have to.
I would recommend, if the board is comfortable, to make a motion that the change is not substantial to the extent warranting a new public hearing, just so that can be in the record.
Okay, so if somebody would make a motion
So
that
moved.
this is not a substantial change, motion has been made.
Seconded.
And seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Just one thought on the landscaping. It would be great if there were some trees and things focused on the Bay Street hillside and on either end of it, perhaps,
Okay.
so that it's
Yeah.
not just a giant berm.
Actually, we left two really nice maple tree specimens there, so that they'll remain as a kind of a buffer from the street. And I forgot to mention that the other benefit from what we did is there really isn't any parking right on Bay Street anymore. With that ring road, now we moved all the parking closer to the building, so you won't see that at the road. So, but we'll consider doing some trees out there as well. Okay.
It is looking really nice.
What's that?
It is looking really nice.
Yeah, so CCI is building that for us too. It's coming along really well. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank
Man of the
you. Okay, let's see, on to the next. I think Roger is here. Maybe we could go over the stormwater regulations one more time. We wanted to set this for a public hearing on March 15th. So we did get some, TABA sent out revisions on the stormwater regulations to everybody for one last look. And I did notice that the suggestion that I had made when we last met was to add a section from the 2014 regulations. And I noticed that that did not get in there. I asked for it to be put in verbatim, so I've got a copy here for you. It was, and then I've also made a copy here. And basically, it says the planning board reserves the right to require compliance with these regulations for projects less than 10,000 square feet, and then cross out for projects in areas of sensitive lands, and add to submit and then implement an improved stormwater management plan when there is a potential for degradation or of local water resources. So, but I've got that written down, and that's from our previous regulations. So, does anybody have any concerns about that?
Can you describe how that change? Excuse me. Can you describe how that makes better what we have in front of us in B1?
Well, I had asked for it to come out of the 214 regulations and be put into this one.
I understand that. I'm just asking, this question is does doing that make what we have in front of us better? I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, okay. Well, it seems that it does make it a little better because it's more specific. And that's basically what we were trying to do. Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, does anybody have any other?
Well, there's a few, hopefully minor issues. I noticed a funny one actually on the first page in B4. It says imperious surface instead of impervious.
It's a surface with
All
attitude.
right.
Yes, that's right. And then in section E2C7, it reads, the sizing and design of stormwater management practices shall utilize new precipitation data. So I'm wondering if rather than new, it should be most recent or something less subjective. Because I'm not sure how you would interpret new.
Well, the reason it says new, frankly, is that the Northeast Regional Climate Center is always updating their data. So you could say most current precipitation data.
Yeah, change new to current.
So new becomes most current.
Okay.
They're only current?
Yeah,
It's
current, just current,
bold,
that's right.
Yes.
I think we just spent four ways saying the same thing. But
Yeah.
current it will become.
And then in,
Or latest, I suppose.
or latest,
I'm trying to pick on you.
in F1J, second sentence reads, treatment water from the impervious area shall comply with standards of the regulation. And I wonder if that was supposed to be treated water or water to be treated rather than treatment water?
Would you say that again? I'm sorry.
So the second sentence reads, treatment water from the impervious area shall comply with all standards of this regulation.
Treated.
Should be treated water?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
And then...
Or water receiving treatment.
Either one, yeah, there you go. And then in I-6, at the top of the second page there, it reads, the landowner shall report on the malfunction in their annual report and include detail regarding when the infrastructure shall be repaired. And do we want to have some requirement for a timely repair rather than just leaving it up to the landowner?
It's usually addressed in the operation and maintenance manual.
Okay.
Typically what happens, it's not part of the regulations, but typically there's an operation and maintenance manual that obligates the property owner's engineer to do an evaluation or an inspector to do an investigation. If everything's up and running, their engineer signs off on it. If it's not up and running, they prescribe and/or execute the remedy, and then the town only gets the report once everything is up to par.
That's all I had.
Okay, you all set?
Yep.
Okay.
So I have one here which was F on the old one, which basically read, DES published guidance suggests that no direct untreated discharges to receiving waters, and I added, or abutting property waters are possible from the storage site. So basically, untreated waters, like the Tailor home, when the woman said that the water was going to run off the snow storage area and run off our property, and I've added abutting properties, but I can't seem to find it because E is not E on the old one, and F is something different.
Yeah, I know, it was.
What was the title on the old one you're looking at?
The title was F salt storage areas, that's how it started, shall be paved and fully covered and contained with permanent or semi-permanent measures, and then it goes down one more sentence, and it starts, snow storage areas shall be located in accordance with New Hampshire DES published guidance such that no direct untreated discharges to receiving waters, and I added, or abutting properties are possible from the storage site.
So that's in C1E, second page. About middle of the paragraph. To receiving waters or abutters is possible.
Adding or abutters.
I don't see where it says abutting properties.
Well, which one is it again?
He said E. It's in the middle here. DS published guidance so that no direct untreated discharges to receiving waters are possible from the storage site. But it doesn't say no direct untreated discharges to receiving waters or abutting properties are possible. It's supposed to say abutting properties after receiving waters.
So 2 ors.
Okay, so did you get that one, Tavis? Yeah, okay.
Trying to find that last one that we tried to add on the last inspection.
So have the usual engineering teams that work with us frequently had a chance to look this over and comment?
Yes.
Did we get a J? Yearly planning board report?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
It's not J, but it is.
It's I-7.
I-7.
Yeah.
Sorry, 6B, right?
right here, planning board.
Okay, okay.
See it?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, everybody else all set? Okay, so we'll have the public hearing.
Public hearing for this as amended March 15th.
Right, for subdivision and site plan regulations, right?
Yes, this 17321, the way this was all done was to fit into site plan regulations. And then part of that hearing will also be the reference in subdivision to point to this.
Okay. Okay, so you're not going to add it, you'll just point to, okay.
I can't see adding 15 pages to
Yeah.
2 places. Yeah.
Okay, all right, good.
Good.
Asking question.
Roger's got something.
Okay.
I think, but I'm not positive, that the provisions in the existing regulations that should be changed as part of this, which you could amend at the same time.
Basically replacing 17321 with 17321.
Okay, is that what there's that one, is the one in the subdivision as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Off and running. Okay, let's see. Water memo update.
All that was reference to the Dave Ford memo that went to the Board of Selectmen that was shared with this board and led to your email. And I didn't know if you wanted to provide any update on what was going on with that.
Dave has said that he is going to have the study completed, but it won't be done for 6 months. And I also met with Jim Pinio and said that the planning board really needs to have a meeting with the selectmen in order to figure out how we can all move together on, you know, whether we're going to have to revise some of our work plan or scale it down or whatever. But I think so he said that, yes, Jim said once he gets back from vacation, that he'll make arrangements for that. So that's the update there. Okay. Okay, work plan 2022. We talked about this at the last meeting. Anybody have any thoughts? Mike, you had asked for short-term rentals to be put back on.
Yeah, I think we should have short-term rentals back on the work program. I think we should start thinking about creating a subcommittee to study the current state of short-term rentals, law thereof, court cases thereof decided in the state, and whether or not and in what form we should start crafting our own ordinance. We have to wait and see what happens with Jeb's bill in the Senate, Senate Bill 249, I think it is, which essentially deprives local municipalities of any kind of oversight over short-term rentals except to have them register and pay a registration fee. That's the only power that we would be allowed to have. That's met with some opposition in the Senate, but there's a lot of momentum behind it. There's a lot of co-signers, and there are a lot of people in the House who are also in favor of it. By the time this legislative session ends, we should know what has happened with that bill. If it passes, then anything that we write is going to be pretty simple. You get to come here and sign a piece of paper saying, I have one, and you give us the $10 fee or whatever it is we assess, and that's all we can do. If that bill doesn't pass, then perhaps we have some additional rights, and that will be decided by court cases. I think that we should get started on this. We should also ask council for some suggestions as to where we should start going, because we're not lawyers and we don't follow this really closely. We need some kind of guidance.
Okay, so what would you,
My suggestion?
to the town council?
I would ask Laura to, I hadn't thought of this before, but I'll just off the top of my head, I would ask her, one, is it practical for this town to begin thinking about crafting an ordinance regulating STRs? And two, if so, what form those regulations should take?
Okay.
Because right now, I mean, it may be premature with Jeb's bill going through the Senate and then eventually the House. And anything we write now, if that bill passes, was going to be tie our hands, except to say, you can put your name on this list and give us a fee to put your name on this list. Tell us where you're located. That's basically all we'd be allowed to do. If his bill doesn't pass, then what we can do is going to be based upon what the courts have decided that we can do, and that's not really finished yet either.
Not having gone through Senate Bill 249, does it dictate or mandate or discuss what a short-term rental is? Does it say what to do with short-term rentals that existed since, say, a town was established, as opposed to those that occur after the passage of the bill?
It's going to have an effective date, and it's going to affect only those that are created after the effective date or on the effective date and thereafter of the bill. Everything else that's existing now is obviously grandfathered as standard for any. They're not going to make a bill retroactive. That would never pass.
I know that there are some and or several in town that are concerned about short-term rentals. What we don't have any handle on is the quantity of short-term rentals. Moreover, I'm not quite sure, without the benefit of reading the bill, I don't know what we benefit by getting $10. I know you just picked a number out of the air.
Right.
$10 for all the new ones. I don't know what we achieve with that.
We're probably not going to achieve anything with that. My thought on this issue is, if that bill passes, then the horse is out. There's no point really thinking about closing the barn door because they're all out in the field now. I remember years ago when Rob Hausman was sitting in your chair, he told me he thought at that time there were 900 Airbnbs or STRs in Wolfeboro. That might have been an exaggeration because he didn't know, he'd never counted, but what he was suggesting was there was a large number of them. And I think there are a large number of Airbnbs and STRs around. We all know that by fact.
Well, the reason I asked the question is, if there is such legislation passed and there is this registration that is able to be, I'll say, enforced very lightly, does the planning board then want to modify the definition of single-family dwelling to specify that it's a place of residence, separating it out from what it currently says?
That's the sort of question that Laura's going to answer, because I think that we would all be on shaky grounds. Maybe you would not, but I would feel I was on shaky grounds if I made that kind of a definition, because this is a litigious time, and it's a very litigious topic. And
it's a town where many people claim to be Wolfeboro residents, but are not making it their place of residence by state definition. So
I think that
it opens up a very large can, if you will.
My advice 2 years ago was, a year and a half, was to sit tight, do nothing, wait for the blood to be spilled on the floor, let everybody else spend their treasure getting definitions of what an STR is and how towns can regulate them. I was comfortable with that advice at the time, and then Senator Bradley came in with his bill, which sort of trumped everything, basically saying if towns can't do anything. That's just the way it is. And there's a lot of momentum behind that bill. So rather than, my current advice is not to sit tight and wait and see anymore, but to get prepared. And the best way I can think of getting prepared is to ask Laura, and she will put into that equation the potential passage of Jeb's bill. And if whatever advice she will offer us is going to be, if Jeb's bill passes, therefore, if If it does not pass, you can do this, based upon current court cases.
And I would presume that if we're going to do that, we need to give her some kind of a goal. You know, what's our intent with
Well, our intent, I think at this point, the only intent we can have is to gather information. We have a case in Portsmouth. We have two cases in Conway, both pointing in a direction of possible ability for the town to regulate short-term rentals, requiring owner occupation of the building that the short-term rental is located in, and then defining what a short-term rental is, a place that is essentially like a rooming house, but different. The trouble is that with the bill that's in the Senate right now that's coming forward, trumps all of that. And if not to use an unfortunate word, but if that's the case, then all bets are off and we have to start fresh, rather than waiting any longer because the public out there is unhappy with the planning board not having done anything so far.
Well, we have done some things. Right.
Maybe we can discuss that aspect a little bit, because we had a lot of meetings, and at one of our middle meetings, we made a motion to regulate short-term rentals, but the fact that we got guidance from the town council on whether or not we could regulate them by the current ordinance, we found out that we couldn't regulate them by the current ordinance. So then basically the Conway case was going through the process, and it was no surprise that we were a divided committee and we couldn't come up with any regulation. But we do have a standing motion on the floor to regulate short-term rentals, but our committee couldn't come up with the guidelines for regulating the short-term rentals. The aspect of the Conway situation and court case came down to the judge making a comment that it contained a kitchen and dining services, and in my mind, I was glad to see that the judge was able to point out what clarified, so to speak, a short-term rental within the accepted boundaries. So, I know that the Londonderry House member, his bill is to trump all towns and not allow them to regulate them by days or uses or any of that stuff. So I'd be willing to sit on that committee again, but I'll be apprehensive to do it too soon here, because I know that the Conway case is going back to court. I mean, I do have my own thoughts on how we can expand it a little bit, but I'd really like to see these other cases come out first. I'm sorry.
Well, then we were in agreement that what we're basically saying is that things are in flux, but it might now be worth asking council's opinion as to what we can do at this point, given the fact that we have three good cases decided, one in the Supreme Court, two in Carroll County Superior Court, and we have one or more bills passing through the House and the Senate on this issue, and we have a public out there which, rightly or wrongly, is unhappy with the way the planning board is acting regarding short-term rentals.
Well,
put it all together and we gather some information. That's my recommendation.
So the other part of that conundrum is that our attorney representing the town of Wolfeboro is the same attorney who is representing the defendant in the town of Conway.
Agreed. But our planning board attorney is not that person.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, Mark Puffer defended the STRs up in Conway. Laura Spector Morgan is the planning board's attorney. So they're different people.
Well, and in all fairness, even if it was the same person, they are acting...
Presumably.
it's the agent for who's hired them, so.
Presumably.
Yeah, right.
Do
So,
they work for the same company?
No,
no,
Oh,
no.
no.
So Tavis, could we get off a memo to Laura and ask her to address these issues? Sure. Okay.
I thought, it's interesting, I thought we were putting things on a work plan, but now we've come up with a work plan in the first step of it, so. Yes, I can get an email out.
Okay.
I'm going to amend the planning board work plan to include work on short-term rentals. And as part of that, I will send the email to Laura.
Okay. All right, anything else on the housing update? I think we also have to include manufactured housing.
Manufactured housing overlay rewrite. Yeah.
Right, yeah, that overlay district when we're looking at all these housing issues.
I think we should, pending receipt of Dave's plan, pull us out of the fire, take housing density off the list. We can't address density at this stage, can we?
I don't know why not.
'Cause
Well,
we don't.
we were going to look at the regulations.
We'll look at the regulations, but we can't, we can't, it's going to be hard to build into proposed regulations for housing updates, comments regarding density, if we increase the density, when we have been told essentially that any large-scale project can't really be handled by the town because we haven't got the capacity.
Right.
I appreciate the comment, but anyone that wants to pull the trigger on an elderly or inclusionary project at this time, those regulations already include a 15% bump. So whether that was contemplated by what Mr. Ford refers to as the natural growth or not, I don't know.
No, I don't think anybody else does either. But what we had talked about regarding density was increasing density over and above what's currently written.
And to that end, what we don't know is
But
if increasing that
also,
density.
looking at the regulations, those regulations really need to be looked at and see if they make sense.
Well, the density portions of those regulations are only portions.
Right.
So we can look at
Yeah.
my thought was to look at the regulations,
Yes,
but not work on the density
Yes,
portions.
right, that's-
Because we just simply don't know what we can or can't do.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, we've got the manufactured housing, multifamily, inclusionary, and elderly. And we really need to look at those, figure out how we can deal with them, and then, wait and see what the results of Dave's study is.
Do we already have a good definition for those somewhere?
Well, we have ordinances.
Those
but they're
are
old.
ordinances that
And
are
they're
currently-
clearly defined?
Yes.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
all in the zoning regulation.
Each one of those is an individual zoning regulation with its own density issues and things.
So
Yeah.
is the Housing Population Economic Development Subcommittee still viable? And would they make some recommendations to us?
Well, you mean from the master plan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we could certainly take it back to them, but I'm not sure exactly what to ask.
Well, what I'd be asking them is what were they projecting? I mean, trying to piece the puzzle back together here on what they were thinking and where we're headed. I mean, it seems like there's a space there in the middle.
Okay, that was all part of the master plan, which is a 10-year plan. And, I think it was just their ideas at the time that we need to be looking at these things. And so that's why we're doing it.
The trouble, sorry.
Go ahead.
The trouble is, I think, John, that when people were working on the master plan, they did not anticipate having the rug pulled out from underneath them.
Right.
With the sudden revelation that the town has come right up to the edge of available sewer and water supply. And consequently, that's sort of, well, pulled the rug out from everybody, you know? There's no point saying we need this and we need that in the form of housing in this town if we can't hook them to a sewer system.
Well, I think there is, though, because the master plan is just the wish list. If they were able to itemize or strategize the things that they believe the community needed, then the new study will clarify better where the town is with regard to water and sewer, and it may actually tie in with number 8 later on impact fees to address how the town can allow that growth and the costs associated for improvements to the system. I'm not anticipating that any water and sewer upgrade is going to be a multi-million-dollar standalone warrant article, though that may be required at some point. It's possible to accommodate growth without taxing the entire population.
Well, you're a lot more sanguine about it than I am, but then I don't have access to your information, and I'm not an engineer either. But it seems to me, based upon my reading of Ford's memo, if you have a hole in the ground which is allowed X number of gallons per day, and you are at Y plus a certain number, almost pushing that X number, and you don't have another hole in the ground to push any additional into.
Well, here's holes in the memo. A lot of the memo was based on X% of the residents not being year-round. As more people come back and are living here year-round, is the number even correct in the memo?
Well, that's
the whole study.
Agreed. And so the question comes back to your suggestion. Is the town going to have to face a fairly large ask from the selectmen to build something that can accommodate that growth? Or can we put additional into those holes that we already have in the ground?
I would think if the study comes back and says we don't have adequate for what we already have, then it's going to be a much different discussion than this is what we have left and how do we move forward.
That's exactly what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
But that's implied in the memo.
Is there a time frame on the resultant decision?
I've heard 6 months, but I don't know
Yeah.
if the study's actually been commissioned yet, so I don't know.
I think there's another part to that equation too, is moving forward with the I&I plan for all the infiltration going in. I know there's one project looking to get off the ground this spring here, which will reduce greatly the amount of crosswater from storm drainage going into the sewer system now, and how much of that can be done on a yearly basis as to how much that's going to open up for future, not expansion, but a future availability for the septic system to be able to, accept new customers or, projects, stuff like that. So that's kind of an unknown number right now, obviously, but
Well, it's not going to be a number big enough to allow this town to grow for the next 50 years.
no, not that long, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if we push anywhere from 40, 50,000 to, pushing 100,000 gallons a day out of it, to tell you the truth, with the amount of some of the old infrastructure we have that we're looking to replace. So I really wouldn't be surprised if it was, at least 40, 50,000 plus.
Like they say, from your lips to God's ears. That would be a great thing to, if we can get
Would be.
100K out of it, that would
Yeah.
be wonderful. It would buy us some time.
Yeah.
But, every year that we don't have our own independent system, costs go up and up and up.
I just making the point that that's another factor that's going to be looked at in this whole conversation, so.
Yeah, I really think we need to see a study.
Yep, oh, definitely.
And so that's what he's supposedly working on right now. So,
Is this some of the study that he's putting on himself, or is this
No.
something he's contracted?
no, he's contracting him.
Yes? Okay.
So how would we approach any new applications that might seek a variance and then get a variance and then have it come to us? What would we do?
Well,
a good question.
that's the question that I think we need to, that's why we have to have a discussion with the Board of Selectmen, because it basically brings everything that we do kind of to a halt.
Yep.
Well,
And
Yes and no. Remember, if somebody's asking for a variance, the zoning board has to evaluate the variance criteria alone. When, let's say, somebody with or without a variance comes in, the planning board can act on that site plan with the provisions that they're able to demonstrate adequate water and sewer capacity. And it might be that the condition precedent is a letter from Public Works or the town at all, if you will, that the town does or does not have those facilities. If they can't provide that letter, then there's no site plan recorded and the project is on hold. It's not really holding anyone up from doing their, I mean, you're obligated to do it. If somebody turns in a site plan, you can't say we can't consider this because we don't have water and sewer, or we don't have adequate road infrastructure. Conditions are just like anything else the planning board can do. You put in a condition that say, under these parameters, you have approval. And until they can demonstrate compliance, it's on them.
So you're saying that the applicant would have to bring the planning board?
Well,
we couldn't approve something and then say, go and see if you can.
That's what he's
until the
That's what
planning
he's
board has
suggesting.
something in writing that says, thou shalt not issue any plans because we need to institute an immediate moratorium for water and sewer, the planning board has to receive it as though those facilities are there. But to back yourselves up, you could make a condition precedent on such plans that they receive sign-off from the various departments.
Right.
To satisfy
condition
those
precedent,
conditions.
not subsequent. That would make
Well, we
some sense.
did talk about that back a few weeks ago, about making sure that any plans went to the various departments for a sign-off. And so maybe now is the time to do that, I guess.
Well, the salient department is the one that doesn't want to go to TRC anymore.
Well, no, but that's why we're saying that we need him to still sign off on these projects.
And apparently he won't be able to until he gets his study done in 6 months' time.
Well, that's going to be up to him if he gets the letter saying we need to know.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, again, that's why
the
I
more
think it's
the more
important
questions
we
that are
meet
asked,
with
the more
select
questions are
men.
raised when it comes to this issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if I were a developer thinking of putting in a project that would demand sewer and water in a substantial fashion here in Wolfeboro, I wouldn't have a whole lot of confidence.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, and
Putting it in
there
here.
are other sets of regulations. There's a regulation in town that says if you develop within, I believe it's 300 feet of a sewer line, you must connect. That is something the town could remove to release that pressure. There are zoning districts that require water connection.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I'm putting on my own work plan for you because there are significant parts of the residential zoning district that are at an elevation that we cannot provide water to. But the zoning district obligates connection to water. Other things that would, building into the system, the ability for someone to say, okay, yes, town water is available, but we can't provide septic or sewer, even though sewer line is there. It could be a waiver through the planning board to allow the HIS calculations to work for them to provide on-site septic. Is it ideal? No. Is it a way to deal with the in-between time between an update? I mean, I have no confidence that in 6 months we're going to have a study that says, oh, here's your answers. If you do A, B, C, and D, then X, Y, Z will come out.
Yeah.
It's going to say, here's where you are. Here's the additional study that's required.
I'm reluctant, though, to make it to suggest to a developer that he go further out into districts that are not requiring water and sewer hookup or where they can't be provided at all, just to be able to get around the fact that we can't provide water and sewer.
Interestingly, other boards have suggested that perhaps density belongs out where no one can see it.
Well, that was my first thought, but then everybody suggested that it'd be better if it were on town water and sewer, especially town sewer, so we wouldn't put the environmental impact into the ground.
Correct.
But now we're having to
and
rethink that.
That's generally where all the state incentives are as well. If you put the added density where you have infrastructure.
Yeah.
But that's assuming it's
Have
adequate infrastructure.
Right.
Well, I think that goes right back to the original conversation when we were discussing the density, and I was proposing large tracts of land further on the outskirts of the middle part of town where obviously there weren't water and sewer, but there were larger tracts where you could create your own septic field.
Yeah, and where the land costs are cheaper than they are downtown where you do have sewer hookups. That's where I thought these larger developments should be going to be more attractive to people coming in to put up a project. But on the other hand, not having hookup onto the sewer puts an impact into the environment, which is long-term.
Well,
But there's more than just water and sewer. You've got power.
Traffic.
You've got fire department. You've got police department. All of those guys. It still is better to be condensed down in the town rather than having one pod way out there that they have to keep zipping back and forth to, or having to run one great big long line out to that goes out all the time.
Well, there's another way of looking at that. If you take that concept and you only have a finite area in your town and you use it up, then everybody's all crammed together. I'm of the position where I don't think that's the right medicine for our town, honestly. I don't, and I know a lot of people in our town don't think that's the right medicine either. And that's where we're having the discussion of people walking to their businesses or whatever, and just half of us are going to say we want it in town, and half of us are going to say it's not a good idea. My feeling is I don't think it's a good idea to stuff our downtown and make our 2-bedroom place 4 bedrooms and so on. I just don't agree with it.
Well, I don't agree with stuffing it, as you said, but, putting one big, condo unit way out in the middle of the fields in the agricultural section just seems like it's sprawl is that word. You know what I mean? You're like making another little town over there.
Well,
It makes it very difficult for all the amenities to get to the town back and forth. Then you're going to hear like, oh, it takes too long to go to the grocery store, like you've been hearing lately.
Well, and that's another area of the ordinance that could be revisited. It could be if you're X distance from a certain area that a portion of the project has to be mixed use. Maybe it needs to have its own store. Maybe it needs to have its own, depending on how big the project is, a fire substation. Maybe there's an engine there so that people just need to respond as opposed to, driving all the way through town to get there.
Yeah,
Wolfeboro doesn't really have a lot of big projects by big place standards.
I lived in a place in New York that was like a new town was being built, and they'd had the grade school put in, and then they had started building the single-family homes in a very dense area. Well, I was out at the very edges because it was all farmland, and as you drove in, the 15 minutes to drive across all the fields, to start to get into the newer section, there was Mrs. Field's ice cream sauce. The factory is right there. It had been out in the middle of nowhere. And then we had a convenience store with gas. There was nothing around for miles, but you could see the plan and where the roads had been laid out. And as you got closer to where they put in a new septic type system thing, then it was all dense again and the school was there. So it was interesting how they planned it, but it was still very condensed in the middle. And as you went farther out to the edge, it got wider and wider and wider. And then it was kind of like, fields and very rural, and then it went into the next town. It was interesting. But it was like what Tapas was just saying, there was a little tiny store. There was a place to get gas.
Well, I'm sure that the Board of Selectmen is aware of the seriousness of this issue, but I think it would be helpful, maybe you've already done this, if Brad were to let the selectmen know that we had this discussion tonight and that we are very concerned and we really don't have a good handle on what we can do about writing regulations to increase density or to accommodate people coming in who are looking to put denser housing any place connected to sewer and water in this town, so we have a resolution of this problem.
Yep. And that it's important for us to meet together to discuss this. I really feel that that needs to be the next step. Anyway, Jim said that he would work on it sometime in April. But I think, Brad, if you could bring it up, I think it would also
Yep.
help a lot.
Because there is a lot of perception out in the town that this board isn't doing anything about it. And that bothers me because I know all these board members are working hard to solve all the problems that are in front of us, and this is the major one right now.
Doing anything about what?
About our density and our housing and our short-term rentals, this is it's all the same package. That, the perception is that we aren't doing enough to accommodate and grow our town and address the concerns of the people that are in the town and the younger folks, and what are we doing to accommodate them and what they need and what they want. And I'm here to say that I'm reading it, I'm listening to you, and I'm willing to do something about it with the rest of our board.
Yeah, it's nothing personal, Tavis. It's just, people out there have a gripe. They look around for someone they can yell at about the gripe. So they have the planning board, or they have the zoning board, or they have the board of selectmen. They yell at whoever they feel like is the most appropriate.
I wasn't taking anything personally. I was just wondering what the public sentiment was that
It's
the
pretty much
board
the same
wasn't
as,
addressing.
It's the same since the 70s, honestly. You come out of high school, there's nothing to do, there's no place to go, you can't see a movie, there's nothing, got to move out of town.
And you balance that with the other side that says
It's
they
the
want it
same
the way it's been since the 50s. So
Yeah, and then those same people say, well, it's just nothing but a retirement town, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I've heard this before somewhere.
Yeah, those who want the town to stay just the way it was in the 50s and early 60s must look at the Ford memo as an absolute blessing, because it's a guarantee of keeping things static, isn't it? No? Anyway.
Okay,
So
let's see.
maybe there's an in-between, in between the density of the sewer and water system proposed that may not work so well, and, the remote areas up in the corner that are half on Ossipee and half in Wolfeboro that we can't get to. Maybe there's a corridor method where there's a major thoroughfare going through town, and there's some big parcel of land not too far from it that could have a density bonus, so that it's not so remote to get to.
Well, in coming off that, it's very interesting that the town is currently zoned in such a way that the only place any commercial can exist is downtown.
Yeah.
That's also the only place you can have any density. That seems to honor the 50s is king model much more than anything else.
Well, from a practical point of view, if you wanted to put in, as we saw with the Alzheimer's facility, a significant facility with a large number of beds, looking for a place that they can get land relatively cheaply, you're going to go out to the boonies, and put your place there, and there is no water and sewer there, so they can still do that. But this board has always worked on the assumption that a project like that, with a lot of density and a lot of stuff going into the ground, needs to be centered downtown where it can be treated environmentally sound.
And that is how we have zoned the town.
Yeah, and now in order to accommodate a problem, we're reversing that philosophy of zoning. And it's maybe more practical and more economical from a developer's point of view, but from a planner's point of view, it's not ideal.
Well, history would show us that we had various pods in town that had little stores and little gas stations that no longer exist. Yep. And we used to have different parts of town that had little mini villages, but authentic,
But you had to
England type.
walk or ride a horse.
Yeah.
You couldn't just hop in your car and drive.
I'm just saying, but we've eliminated that model.
Oh, yes.
Well, that model wasn't eliminated as a result of zoning, though. That model was eliminated for a lot of different reasons, mainly the economic crash following the Civil War, and then the economic crash following the woolen industry in the First World War. Tended to break up the smaller districts at outlying towns, or outlying portions of the town, was maybe in the 1950s, there were still little sections where there were small towns, like down South Wolfeboro around Westies. It was a little village all by itself. It's not there now, and that wasn't really because of zoning, it was because of economic factors. But, you know, modern zoning wants to get development and growth concentrated into an area where it can be managed carefully and have the lowest environmental impact. And that's what we've been going on. That's the assumption we've been going on, the philosophy we've been working on, or at least as long as I've been on this board. But that seems to be having to bend now as a result of external circumstance. And that's not the way to do planning. That's not the way to do zoning. Do zoning by plan, not by accident.
No, I'm wondering if we need to take a step back and take a sort of a fresh eyes look at our zoning overall, and maybe reconsider how we've been doing things.
It hasn't been all that long, honestly, when we made those circles.
Yeah, right.
Because my kids were Crescent Lake, because we went up there for the show. So it hasn't been that long.
No, it hasn't been.
More than 15 years, but not less than 20.
No, it hasn't been 15 years.
About?
It almost has been.
Well, it's been 15, but it hasn't been 20.
Well, we did look at the rezoning, and I think it was in 2011 or sometime around there. So it's not.
Yeah,
that-
when we brought in Wolfeboro Falls and Bay Street and that and added
Right,
those. But I mean,
yes.
the initial ones are the down core, you know, the village, and then the other arcs that we put in there.
Right.
You know, it hasn't been all that long. And if I remember correctly, they kind of drew themselves because that's kind of like where everything already was. We just kind of drew it on the map like, oh, this seems to be where the village is. You know, oh, this seems to be where all the businesses are, because that's where they were.
Well, I wasn't here for any of that, obviously, but it sounds to me that it was more reactive than proactive if you're defining it by what was there already. And what we need to consider is where it's going to be in the future, and do, as our job, be planning. And it may not be where it was then or where it is today.
Well,
Guide where it's going to go in the future.
Businesses used to be farther out, 28, you know what I mean? You know, but for some reason that, you know, when they ended or whatever, just things didn't go back in where they were.
So Tavis, from your expertise, how do you implement a density bonus for outlying areas?
Well, there really aren't many carrots out there. The way to do it would you basically get down to smaller lot sizes, allowing, and part of the reason for the need to go back and look at the manufactured housing overlay, not that it even has to be manufactured, but you know, combining manufactured housing overlay with a cluster subdivision, allowing people to do shorter roads, smaller lots, but more open space. So you have the small neighborhood feel, if you will, but the town still is manifesting its open space expanses. So that's when you have to pull in the open space plan and the trails plan and the natural resources map, and then figure out where in that you put those bubbles of development. And then, you know, depending on how much better you make your stormwater, or how much better you make your septic system, or how much better, you know, maybe if you have LEED certified green roof buildings, you get a density bonus. So you're still getting all, you know, maximizing the environmental protections, if you will, but the benefit is more units that can be sold. It all boils down to that.
What's the density bonus equal? Like, what? So if you say, okay, you're getting density bonus.
Right now with inclusionary zoning, it's an example. If you have 15% low to moderate income, you get a 15% density bonus. Well, what's the 15%? 2 plus 15% is what? 2. Right. So how many bonuses do you then need to actually make it worthwhile doing? This is why this is why the regulations are broken. Your base density is 2 units per acre, and even with all the bonuses, you might get 3. That's not enough of a bonus to make somebody want to jump through those.
Right. Yeah.
No, and you used that word neighborhood too. We don't have neighborhoods anymore.
No.
Neighborhood would be a good thing. little cluster of homes, and then a little ways down at a bus stop.
But another way
cluster
to
of homes.
incentivize it is to allow more than just residential in a residential neighborhood. What makes a neighborhood a neighborhood? Maybe it has a store. I know the town is generally 100% against gas stations, but it is a thing. Maybe if it's a gas station, it's also charging stations. The problem is when you put in some of those amenities, it becomes that much harder to keep it at I don't want to, little a, big A, affordable, whatever number you want to use, they're going to be market rate homes. So we haven't addressed any of the affordable context. So it might be you get a whopper of a density bonus if you put in affordable for life, not 10 years or the life of the loan or what have you. But a section of that project needs to be affordable or for low to moderate or low, or and that's how you do it. I'm a little flummoxed that all of Center Street was rezoned residential. I know why it was done, but there's no reason potentially it couldn't be rezoned something else with.
And we did try that.
With design standards to say, no, we're not doing, you know, not everybody needs auto body and auto repair, but maybe not there. You know, all of the things that were there and its proximity to the water, that's why it went to residential. But I have people saying, I can't open an antique store. I can't put in an ice cream shop. Nope, it's residential. We have very strict, limited uses. Even those that you would think make sense along a corridor such as that. Particularly when we have water and sewer running out as far as the Nick. I mean, it's right there. You can get better development. Some of the uses that are there because there wasn't water and sewer. The response necessarily isn't to rezone it residential to fix that, but to make better development possible with water and sewer. But that circles right back around to the memo, so there's a lot of things to consider.
Oh, can we, where does everybody want to start? Do you want to start with the housing? Because we need to give Tavis some direction.
Well, the first thing Tavis is going to start on is the newly added short-term rental email to Laura.
Yeah.
I'm going to, under number 5, also schedule for 3:15, amending site and sub-regulations to remove the newspaper noticing requirement. And then at the same time, we'll have the stormwater regulation public hearing as discussed earlier.
Yeah, a number of these you're going to be able to knock off in a short space of time.
Stormwater regulation and roads, I would put up there probably something we can start discussing as the housing is manifesting. Because I think in combination with shorefront, those are the next two things that make sense immediately following stormwater regulations. Housing is going to be evolving. I imagine a lot of that discussion is going to have to do with Laura's response to the short-term rental.
Right. But I do agree that shorefront regulations, we need to take a look at that.
And I can bring my thoughts back on the 15th on what next steps might be to address that regulation.
Okay.
As a workshop item. One thing I haven't even put on the agenda, you have no projects for public hearing on the 1st, so I would recommend the board cancel your 3-1 meeting.
All right.
That also frees up some time to handle a lot of these bullet points before.
Okay, is everybody all set?
What did you
with-
say? Do what?
Cancel the
meeting?
3-1 meeting.
Yeah, cancel the
Cancel the
3-1.
3-1
Okay.
meeting? Okay, all right,
And
okay. And also, we need to put in this list of removal of the C2 zoning district to C1.
That effectively is just the deletion of a paragraph. I
Yeah,
can put that warrant
right.
article together.
Yeah, I know,
easy.
but I just didn't want to forget it.
You know, one of the things that we did when we did the ADU ordinance is we added that it had to be attached to the house. That's another way to allow people who own a house and want to have a dwelling unit by would be more amenable to having it if it didn't have to be more like a duplex.
Very good, Vaughn. I agree.
So now you're talking about 2 units on a lot?
No, you're talking about an abutting property that abuts the owner.
Yeah, but it is 2 units on a lot.
Yeah, it would be 2 units on a lot.
Yeah,
Two units are already required by, or allowed by state statute.
but they have to be attached.
They don't have to be.
We made
Wolfeboro
it-
adopted it that
I'm
way.
we
just-
made it
that's-
Yeah, we've made
That's my
it.
point. We made it that way, maybe we should reconsider that.
My recommendation to that point is that if it's attached, you have to agree with the conditions. If it's detached, you come get your conditional use permit.
And
that
you
again?
do-
Right now, in order to have an ADU in Wolfeboro, you have to come in front of the planning board for a conditional use permit that basically says
right.
you have to agree with the 6 things in the regulations. My suggestion is if the board wants to open the discussion of detached ADUs, that's where the CUP comes in, and attached is by right with the building permit.
No, I'm not talking about a detached ADU. I'm putting it more in the short-term rental category so that, and that's kind of where I'm trying to cross over here. I mean, a lot of the short-term rental discussion comes down to non-owner occupied situations where things get out of control, and if the owner's nearby, things usually don't get out of control. So I'm trying to blend that concept to if an owner occupies a property abutting another property, and then if, you know, the short-term regulations come in, it's a bit more acceptable to have a short-term rental next to an abutting property of an owner rather than it is to have an abutting, a short-term rental where you live in another state and you don't even care about the short-term rental. If you're nearby, things are going to be controlled, and it's going to be probably a neighborhood feel short-term rental, but we're not even there yet.
I could support detached as well as attached in an ADU situation like Ron just suggested.
Like a
I'd
cottage,
like-
is that what you're thinking, like a cottage?
Yeah, something like that, but I'd like to see owner occupation of the principal dwelling a requirement in both cases.
ADUs, you can't obligate the owner. The owner has to live on the property, but you can't dictate which unit they occupy.
Well,
Yeah,
has to live on
right.
the property.
Yeah.
But that's the law now.
But yes, but we write ADU regulation to allow detached as well as attached, and put the CU conditional use permit on the detached section. The attached section, I still want to retain owner occupation in that building,
That,
to avoid what John is
That's
just describing as
state
being
law.
some guy living in Tennessee having two units.
It's a state law, you just said? It's a state law, so,
anytime you have an ADU, it has to be an owner-occupied property, whether it's attached or detached. My suggestion was if it's attached, it not need a conditional use permit. Because there are many, this is my fear with 249. The legislature did no town in New Hampshire any favors the way they drafted accessory dwelling unit. Because there's nothing preventing John from putting 3 more kitchens in, or any of you for that matter, 3 more kitchens in your home. There's nothing preventing you from putting multiple bathrooms in your home. There's nothing preventing you from adding bedrooms other than your septic limitations. But the state law with the ADU has now made it such that if you shut a door, you can rent that half or portion of a building, and it's now by definition an ADU, whether it has a conditional use permit or not.
Well, in my mind, the way that the Conway litigation's coming down, it explicitly wrote that if you have a kitchen, that makes it it means that they can have their short-term rental. My feeling is if we just said, okay, your short-term rental can't have a kitchen, it would be like the old days where you were just renting a room to somebody.
To me, that's worse.
Is the public beating down your door regarding ADUs? Why can't I have one because it's not attached?
No.
There's no reason?
No,
change?
because the people that don't want it attached are coming up with creative ways around the rule.
Would the creative ways around the rule be solved if we had detached ADUs, in your
Yes.
opinion?
I'm
And
sure
why
there are
don't we
many
put-
people that would love not to have to build
Then why don't we
$750
put that
million
on
tunnels to
the
get
work
around the
plan?
Because we don't allow more than one dwelling on a lot.
We do. Yeah, we
You
do.
do.
We have to
State
by
law,
law.
state
We
law
have to.
tells you you have to. You don't have a choice.
The only thing we required and added it onto the state law was that it had to be attached. But if we're
Right.
looking to increase density in town, why don't we
Now,
let them?
and the state law also allows, if you allow detached, you can require larger lot sizes. I'm not suggesting you need to do that because there's no rhyme or reason behind
You know,
that.
that would just,
But aren't we
Okay,
going to
the
get
purpose.
into the situation where the garage is now legitimate?
Yes.
You don't require, the
that's
regulations don't require you to
Contrary
have
to
a,
what we're talking about all this time, so I'm not for that.
that's one of the reasons there's a petition warrant article. Right now, the town does not require you to have a garage. State law allows you to have an accessory dwelling unit, and you have to meet parking. So it becomes the owner's decision whether you have a garage or you turn it into an ADU. And it's more apt to happen now when you have an attached garage because you don't need it. You can simply come in and get your conditional use permit.
I think we just stay the same with the accessory dwelling unit. We're going to get into trouble when we start allowing garages to be built into ADUs. I think it's bad. I don't want to go that way.
But they already are being built.
Unattached, yeah.
ADUs.
I don't want to go that way. I don't want to see more than 2 dwellings. I don't want to see 2 dwellings on a lot.
It's actually an effective way to create affordable housing.
That's,
Yeah, there
that
is
we're
that
we're
too.
competing with our own desires. Do we or do we want affordable housing? I mean, those are the units that get rent out either to your help or somebody else's help.
Yeah, but we've been, our policy has been to get that bathroom on the first floor so we didn't create a living situation in that accessory structure that was on the property.
And honestly, this is just a personal opinion. I don't know what the fear is. As soon as 2017 happened and accessory dwelling units were allowed, the town has put enormous pressure on not allowing detached ADUs. If you simply allow attached ADUs, you actually have more control over that conversion than if you try and regulate a half bath, full bath, ground floor, second floor. What if it's a walkout basement? I mean, a lot of things get much simpler, and you actually have control over it and have the ability to regulate how it occurs,
that's a good point.
as opposed to trying to figure out who's sticking a bathroom where.
Yeah.
People aren't banging down my doors about detached ADUs, but I have 5 neighbors that I could rattle off right now that I'm convinced sit at their kitchen window with binoculars trying to figure out if their neighbor's doing an illegal conversion.
Anyway, okay. All right, let's see, Peter Goodwin, we're going to be meeting with the implementation plan for the master plan when he comes back, which will be next week or sometime. And so we'll be able to report back to the planning board on that. I had a call from Maggie Steer the other day. She wants to get together to discuss the charrette and how we want to proceed. So we'll be talking about that, I think, in the future. And did anybody else have anything they wanted to put on?
Yeah,
on
let's-
the, I know, the impact fee. Do we have the contract back from the, I mean, have we figured out how we're going to pay for?
No, I have not gotten an answer on that.
We haven't what?
I have not gotten an answer on how the second half is to be funded. So I will have another discussion with the town manager on that before contacting the consultant to set up a time to start that work.
Oh, okay. All right. Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to suggest we put on a further continued discussion regarding ADUs, detached versus
Yeah.
attached.
Yeah, I just added that under housing because,
It's housing.
Fine,
well.
It's
yeah,
housing.
as long as it isn't overlooked, because I think that's an issue that we should thrash out a little bit more.
I mean, 'cause-
Yeah.
John, I felt
right.
exactly the way you did, but I'm beginning to think that maybe.
I don't know if the world can
it
hear
might
you,
be
Mike.
better.
I don't
I
believe,
don't know if the world could hear what you were saying to John. while you
I
were-
thought I was talking to John. I felt the same way you do now about a detached ADU when we first discussed the issue. I'm not sure that's My concerns still stand as strongly as they did then. I just think it would be good to talk it through.
I'm willing to talk it through, but again, I don't think that allowing a second dwelling on a lot promotes affordable housing. I just think it promotes more short-term rentals.
That's the option of the owner.
Well, it's the option of us on the planning board to listen to our constituents, and they tell us that that's not what they want.
They want affordable housing.
They want affordable housing, they don't want short-term rentals.
But they.
I went to majority of the short-term rental committee meetings. I did not hear any resounding cry to stop short-term rentals. I heard concerns over what the short-term rentals may create in certain areas, i.e. 1 or 2 short-term rentals pose a problem. But if there are, in fact, as Mr. Hausman suggested, 900 of them, I think the town would have a very strong opinion one way or the other about short-term rentals as opposed to the recent influx in certain areas.
Well, if you had 900 lake houses, you'd have 1,800 short-term rentals.
I have seen a definite disinterest in any of the large lakefront properties having ADUs.
Yeah, they won't be doing the ADUs. It's people who are looking for the additional income or people who are looking to put up grandma and grandpa.
Well, that's what I felt that they started out being, was just like, it had to be like the nurse live-in for the elderly couple, and then it seemed to morph into like, oh no, the mother-in-law house.
The state adopted the ADUs primarily as a way to encourage housing.
Yeah.
They also were looking at allowing older folks to be able to age in place by perhaps moving into an area over the garage or a portion of the home while renting out the rest. What's interesting is they're now coming up with Senate Bill 249 to regulate rental after they made it mandatory that all single-family property have rentals. But I don't work at the legislature.
Okay, let's move on then to the minutes.
So there's one thing that we didn't talk about was conservation subdivision regulation.
Right, well, it's on the list.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
but we didn't mention it. I mean, that goes right back into housing. It's a cluster type concept.
Okay.
I will bring some thoughts on conservation subdivision with those discussions.
What?
And the problem with the current way it's written.
Yes. I mean, I addressed in a memo about a year ago the problem with the way it's written right now. You get more space, open space with a traditional than you do with conservation. So I think, short answer, I think the conservation subdivision regs are going to go away and we need to reconsider a cluster subdivision that addresses the original intent of conservation.
Okay, but you're saying it should be under
Part of housing.
housing as well.
Yeah.
Isn't that what you're saying, Glenn?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. It needs to be under housing.
Yeah, just add it under housing.
Okay, all right. December 7th, 2021 minutes. Everyone had an opportunity to look at these?
Oh, page 7, there's the word "is." The second paragraph, I guess, says Vaughn asked if this is a flat roof. So,
Okay. Anyone else have any corrections? If not, I would entertain a motion
Move to approve.
approve. Okay, motion has been made,
seconded.
seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, then on to the February 1st.
I have a couple, page 2. The paragraph that starts, Mike Hutter asked about the rods, it should be the roads.
Yeah.
And then the next paragraph down, Vaughn Dugan seconded the motion, and just change that to seconded. And then in the next paragraph directly below that, do the same thing. Vaughn Dugan seconded the motion. That's all I had.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Okay.
Move to
Motion.
approve.
Thank you. I'll second it. All in favor of the February 1st minutes, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Move to adjourn.
Abstentions? Okay, all right,
Seconded.
great.
Aye.
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 Yes, right, no, yes, thank you. Okay,